Hello, everybody. Louie Lou here, aka Lumungus, and today I want to talk to you about video games, but not just any video games. I'm going to be talking to you about Nintendo games exclusively. And not only am I going to talk about their consoles, but I'm also going to talk about some of the games that specifically stood out to me. I'm also going to talk about the decline of the quality Nintendo has been giving gamers lately. Now, although I've played all kind of different video games and all kind of different systems, Nintendo is where my passion and my love for video games started. And I always felt like buying a new Nintendo console was always a good go-to. Like, you might not have always got the best graphics, but you were always guaranteed some pretty fun gameplay. But as of late, I feel like Nintendo has just been kind of recycling gameplay and just giving us bits and pieces, almost like DLC or patches to a game, but instead they're making us pay a whole another $70. Now, I don't want anybody to think this video is just strictly here to bash Nintendo, because like I said, this is where my video game career started. But I do want to point out some of the griefs and grievances I do have with them. And I believe a lot of other gamers out there are gonna have the same kind of feelings I do. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, please stick around and we'll get into it. But first and foremost, thank you so much for stopping by. You could have been anywhere in the world. You could have been doing anything in the world, but instead, you're here with me. And I think that's pretty cool. Also, really quick, in the video, I'm going to be wearing a different shirt. I filmed that video first and then I did my intro after. I actually just forgot to make an intro. So this is the intro to the video. So let's take a trip back in time to when blowing in a cartridge was a valid troubleshooting method. And nothing beat the excitement of unwrapping a brand new game console on your birthday or Christmas morning. Now for me, that moment, that defining moment, was when I unwrapped the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES. The Nintendo Entertainment System released July 1983 in Japan at first, but it wasn't known as a Nintendo Entertainment System. It was known as the Family Computer, but in Japanese markets, they called it the Famicom. The Famicom was later re-released and redesigned for American markets in a more of a test market kind of thing to see how well it would do before they actually did a full-on release. The game did so well that it had an actual launch in 1986 where they renamed it the Nintendo Entertainment System as we know today. Now, Nintendo, this was a defining moment. This was video games. Now, when I was a little bit younger, I'm old school, so I had me an Atari. Not many people know about that, but I played that really crappy ET game. I played that live, and it was terrible. And even though it was terrible, it was still me being able to control a character on the TV. So when I got the Nintendo, it was a dream come true. Now, the Nintendo came with the classic Super Mario Duck Hunt combo. Now, don't get me wrong, Duck Hunt was cool. I mean, who didn't mind shooting some 8-bit smug ducks? But, you know, Mario, that was my guy. I also had the Zapper gun, though. I had the little orange and gray gun. Still shot, you know. But anyway, I played that game for hours. I played that game for days. I played that game for weeks, just trying to master every jump, every level, every little secret. And Mario had secrets. Like, you could find, this was what was amazing about the game, and that really kind of blew my mind back then. It was that you could find these little secrets and find secret warp pipes, and it would take you to different levels. But the game was hard. But when it got too hard, I would tag my mom in. Now, my mom wasn't a pro, but at the time, she was better than me, and I appreciated the help. Her and I would play this game all day, all night. And although she wasn't the greatest, she really tried. That kind of teamwork, those kind of memories, they stick with you forever. And like I said, as I kept playing, I kept finding these secrets, these little hidden paths and the warp pipes. Basically shortcuts that changed how I approached the game entirely. Suddenly, it wasn't a game anymore. It was a world full of secrets just waiting to be uncovered. Then Mario 2 came out, and Mario 2 was different. It was weird. It was fun. It had its moments, but it was weird. You got to pick out like 5 different characters, I believe, and I think they all had their own attributes or something like that. It was terrible, honestly. But Mario 3 was a masterpiece. Full-on interactive world maps, unique suits, secrets galore. There was if anybody's as old as I am, I think they would remember when you get the flutes and you could go skip to different worlds. I think you get 2 flutes and you can go all the way to world 8, I believe was the last Bowser world. It felt like Nintendo had taken Mario 1 and leveled it up. And speaking of leveling up, Mega Man. Mega Man was incredible. You got to pick your own starting stage. There was bosses with specific weaknesses, strategy, and action. That was groundbreaking stuff back then. Then came the Super Nintendo, the SNES. The jump to 16-bit felt like going from Saturday morning cartoons to a full-blown animated Pixar movie. Everything just looked, sounded, and felt better. Released in 1990 in Japan as the Super Famicom, and then later released in 1991 as the Super Nintendo, or the SNES as we know it. Now, leading the charge was Super Mario World. This game just wasn't a sequel, it was a revelation. Bright, colorful, vibrant worlds, buttery smooth controls. And Super Mario was back, but this time he had a buddy with him, and his buddy's name was Yoshi. There was 4 different color Yoshis. The first one we know as the green Yoshi. Everybody knows that one. Now, what was cool about Mario, when you were Yoshi, or when you had Yoshi and you ate a yellow shell, every pound you did or every jump you did was a ground pound. Every red shell you ate would turn into 3 fireballs. And then when you got the blue shell, you would be able to fly for unlimited time. So the other 3 Yoshis were blue, red, and yellow. So the blue Yoshi, whatever shell you ate, you'd be able to fly for that limited time. Didn't matter the color. The red Yoshi, you'd be able to spit 3 fireballs. And the yellow Yoshi, whatever jump you did, would just turn into a pound. Again, like the yellow shell. The world was packed with alternate exits, all kind of secrets, and the elusive Star World. The Star World would test your true Mario skills. This wasn't for the weak. This wasn't for your little brother. This wasn't for player 2. This was for the main Mario. Every time I played the game, I found something new, and it only drew me deeper into the immersion of the game. Then, of course, you had Donkey Kong Country. Donkey Kong brought its own innovation and challenge to the Super Nintendo. Whether it was Donkey and Diddy in the first, or Diddy and Dixie in the second, or Dixie and Kitty in the third, each game would test your skills and reward persistence. The multiple defeats and levels, they didn't bother you and they didn't discourage you, because you felt yourself getting better with every attempt. Until finally you would beat the level, and then you would get an unreal sense of accomplishment. And then there was Kirby Superstar. I remember playing this game all the time with my cousins, my little brother, my little sister. Kirby was cool, or Kirby Superstar was cool, because it was basically all the other Kirbys wrapped up into one game. And then they also had some kind of bonus stuff, like bonus mini games and little bonus things you could do. What was really cool about Kirby Superstar is you could play all these levels, but you can also have a player 2. So everybody knows that when Kirby absorbs an enemy, he can get a power. And now when Kirby gets that power in Kirby Superstar, he can use what they call the copy ability. Now, the copy ability allows Kirby to take that power and turn it into a sidekick. So let's say you ate the motorcycle guy and you became the wheel. Now, if you would use the copy ability, you would copy him, and then player 2 can be the wheel. And it was kind of like Sonic and Tails, how the player 2 could control Tails at the time. But this was way better. You were way more interactive. There was all kind of different characters you could be. Because remember, you could copy basically any power you can absorb, and the game had tons of powers. Probably, it had to be over 20 powers, something like that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 was released in 1996 in both Japan and America. Although it came out a few months before in Japan, America didn't have to wait long like it did with previous consoles. And Nintendo 64 was crazy. We had Mario Party, we had Mario Kart, we had Ocarina of Time, we had this game called Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley was incredible. I recommend everybody go check it out. It was a very unique game for its time. I'm not really going to explain it because I'm not good at that, but just go give it a try. Trust me. And then we had one of my personal favorites was Majora's Mask. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time was cool, but Majora's Mask just stood out to me. It was haunting, and it was dark. And there's probably plenty of videos out there of people talking about Majora's Mask, so I'm not really going to get into it too much. But for me, it's one of my favorite Zelda games, and maybe it has to do with the fact that you're not saving Zelda. There, I said it. And then there was GoldenEye. So the Nintendo 64, so for anybody who doesn't know, this is what a Nintendo 64 looks like. Mine is all white with $100 bills all over it. We have a copy of Ocarina of Time in there. So for anybody that doesn't know, the Nintendo 64 has 4 ports. Now this was new. This was new kind of innovation. The PlayStation had something like that, but it was an adapter you would have to plug in, and not many games supported it. But for the Nintendo 64, almost every game supported this multiplayer function. It was almost like the Nintendo 64 was begging you to ask your mom for a sleepover. I mean, you had proximity mines on the facility, you had golden gun battles, you had slappers only, you had explosives only. Then you had big head mode. Anybody that knows about big head mode, you would turn everybody's head big. I think it was called something else. It wasn't called big head mode. But if we're going to be talking about mind-blowing Nintendo 64 games, we can't forget about my boy Super Mario again. Now, Super Mario was awesome. Super Mario 64, I should say, was awesome. It was the first time that we got to see Mario in 3D, and they really did a phenomenal job with this. There was all these big open spaces. There was hidden secrets. It was basically a sandbox Mario game. And you can't forget the castle hub world. So basically, like, you would have to jump inside paintings to go into different worlds. There was this hub world where you would start, which was Princess Peach's castle. And what was cool about the hub world was that there was all kind of secrets to be found within that as well. And you can't forget about the infamous hunt for 120 stars. So back then, we didn't have the internet like you young folks got it today. So secrets and like hidden things in games were just rumors, and you would have to find out if they were true or not by just doing it yourself. So one of the big things about Super Mario 64 was the 120 stars. If you got all 120 stars, you would get to see Yoshi on the top of Princess Peach's castle. So I did it, got all the stars, went up there, and bam, there he was. It was unfortunate he didn't do much. He only gave you a little line saying that he was going to be in the next game and how good it was to see you. But honestly, it was really good to see Yoshi, especially after all the times I had sacrificed him in the Super Nintendo version, just so I can get over the jump. But don't look at me like that, because I know you've all done it. And then there was Super Smash Brothers. Super Smash Brothers is a game that I still play to this day. Ness was my main then, he's my main now, and he'll be my main always. But this game was cool because you took all these cool legendary Nintendo characters and you put them all into a big brawl. I actually remember the commercial for this so well. It was Mario, Luigi, Donkey Kong, and Pikachu. They're walking in the field, and then I think someone just punches someone and they all just start fighting. It was crazy. The Nintendo 64 was the perfect system for all-night gaming and sleepovers. It brought people together, sometimes in fierce competition, but sometimes in explorative cooperation. It was weird and ambitious, but it was bursting with originality. Nintendo was swinging for the fences, and Nintendo was hitting home runs. Now, next up on our list is going to be the Nintendo GameCube. And hold on one second. I got a Nintendo GameCube right here. This guy was the little purple powerhouse that had a handle on it. It also had 4 ports, as you'll see here, and then it'll have little slots for your game card. Hold on. Now, although the GameCube was small, this thing delivered, and it delivered in a lot of ways that people overlook. People have been throwing dirt on my boy's name, and I won't have it. I won't have it one bit. There was Super Mario Sunshine that came out for that one. That was a really good game. It wasn't my favorite Mario, so I'm not going to brush on it too much. But what really changed the game for gamers, for true competitive Nintendo gamers, was Super Smash Brothers Melee, whatever you want to call it, the next Smash Brothers. This game was faster, it was deeper, it was sharper. It became the Smash game to play. And not only that, it would forever link the GameCube controller with competitive Smash. Melee took the foundation of the original Smash Brothers that came out for Nintendo 64 and made it more of a technical skill kind of fighting game. And yes, I still pick Ness. Always will be my boy. But then there was Resident Evil 4. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Resident Evil 4 originally came out as a Nintendo exclusive for the GameCube. That's right, a Resident Evil game was an exclusive for Nintendo, and it killed. This was a genre-shifting, groundbreaking experience. Before this, most Resident Evil games were really kind of clunky. Don't get me wrong, they were terrifying. They were great games. I'm never trying to take anything away from those games. This felt more of, yes, it was still creepy, but it had more of an action spin to it. And Resident Evil 4 introduced the over-the-shoulder, third-person kind of gameplay. A lot of other games would do this afterwards, a couple of them being Gears of War and Dead Space. Now here's another hidden gem. Also a Nintendo GameCube exclusive that not many people talk about, and it was Lost Kingdoms. Lost Kingdoms was developed from Software, which if anybody knows, they're the creators of Dark Souls. Lost Kingdoms was a card-based real-time RPG, and it was weird in the best way possible. You would get these cards, and with the cards, you would be able to use certain maneuvers. Like some cards would be an attack card, some cards would be a trap card, some cards would summon a monster that would come and attack your opponent, but each card had its own abilities and strategic uses. Lost Kingdoms was dark, but it was also not what you would expect Nintendo to kind of release as an exclusive on one of their systems, but it worked really well. Lost Kingdoms 1 was okay, but the sequel took everything from the first game and made it better. And that's what I really liked and appreciated about the Nintendo GameCube. It was a playground for offbeat non-Nintendo titles, and it worked really well. Then there was Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 2 was amazing. There was a bunch of different characters you could play as, both heroes and villains. This was the first time that could play Sonic on a Nintendo console, which was crazy because back in the day, Sonic and Mario, they were rivals. It was Sonic versus Mario, Nintendo versus Sega. Sonic Adventure 2 was great because there was a bunch of different characters you could play as, both heroes and villains. You can even play as Robotnik, you could play as Knuckles, Tails, whatever. Now, all that was cool and all that was great about Sonic 2, but my favorite part about Sonic 2 was the Chow Garden. Now, the Chow Garden was this place where you can get these little cute creatures called chows. You would have to do certain things in the real game in order to give them food and help them get experience to level up. And the chows were cool because you can have them do like little mini games. Basically, it was a game within a game. And another interesting thing about the chows, you can have them grow up to 3 different kind of classes. Either dark, where they would kind of have like this devil look to them. Neutral, where they just be kind of cool looking, whatever. Or good, where they'd have an angel aesthetic. And the last game I want to talk about for the Nintendo GameCube is going to be Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. Now, Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes was a full-on remake of the original Metal Gear Solid. But guess what? Another exclusive for GameCube only. So at this time, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty had already came back. So what they did was they took the gameplay from that and incorporated it into Metal Gear Solid 1. There was a lot of mixed reviews on this. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I personally felt it made the game a little bit better. This was a bold move for Nintendo, bringing one of video games' most cinematic features to Nintendo, to the GameCube. The GameCube might not have sold as well as its competitors, but for those of us who owned it, it delivered a library full of unforgettable experiences, from iconic first-party titles to unexpected third-party experiments. And it showed that Nintendo used to be a place where innovation and surprise could live side by side. Next on the list, we have the Wii, which was codenamed Revolution. And honestly, it was. Nintendo had flipped the script entirely. Instead of chasing graphics, they were chasing fun. The Wii Remote, or the Wiimote as we called it in my house, wasn't just a controller. It was a sword, it was a tennis racket, it was a bowling ball. The game Wii Sports made everyone a gamer, from your little cousin to your grandma and everybody in between. It had motion control and it had DS connectivity. And it also still respected the past. The Nintendo Wii was backwards compatible, meaning that you could play old GameCube games on your Nintendo Wii. Also, the Wii came with 4 controller ports that supported the GameCube controller. And we got great titles from there. I remember playing one of my second favorite Zelda games was Twilight Princess. I remember gamers like crying over this. It's not that serious. But Twilight Princess was fun, and it was nice to see Link in those kind of graphics. And sure, Nintendo wasn't chasing graphics, they were chasing gameplay, and I really respect that. If you ask any gamer, any real gamer out there, they're going to tell you, sure, graphics are great, but they'd rather have great gameplay. Gameplay kills graphics any time of the day. Graphics are just a bonus. As long as we have great gameplay, it doesn't really matter. I mean, don't give me some garbage, but take Fallout New Vegas, for example. People still play that game to this day, and it's only because the gameplay is just so significantly fun. Nintendo wasn't just a company that made video games. They made memories. Each console brought new bright ideas and fresh gameplay and new ways to connect with your family and friends. They were always bold, they were always experimenting, and they were always delivering magic in new ways. But as you'll see later in this video, that magic has started to dim lately. Like the company that once led the charge has started to play it too safe, and they no longer target gamers in which they started. But before we dive into the negative, let's just take a quick moment of silence to appreciate what Nintendo brought us in the past. And then came the Wii U, the infamous Wii U. At first, I wanted to believe. I really did. After everything Nintendo had given us, they gave us Resident Evil, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Donkey Kong, GoldenEye. They were giving us bangers left and right. I remember watching the reveal and seeing the gamepad and thinking this might have potential. I was a little scared at first, but I mean, like, it was Nintendo, and I had trust. Let's start with the name, the Wii U. A lot of people were confused when this first came out because they weren't sure exactly what it was. Was it a new controller? Was it a new feature? Was it a new game console altogether? Nintendo never really made that clear, so most consumers thought it was just going to be an accessory for the Wii. The branding was really weak and muddled, and there was really no excitement to be found. And the gamepad, which was supposed to be the system's main innovation, did not deliver. It ended up being a gimmick more than anything. It was clunky, it was heavy, it had terrible battery life. Sure, it had a screen, but it felt like it was fighting for your attention instead of enhancing the immersion. Looking back and forth from the gamepad to the TV, it really broke the flow of gaming. What was worse is that it kind of forced you to play games with it, even in situations where using a Pro controller would have made more sense. Then there were the games, or rather the lack of them. The launch lineup was painfully thin. And even after the launch, the droughts were brutal. There would be months that would go by with nothing meaningful to come out for the system. When games did come out, they felt rushed or late or half-hearted. All that third-party support that we saw in the GameCube was completely gone. Most developers didn't want to deal with the system that had outdated software and hardware before it even hit the shelves. It did not compete with the PS4 or the Xbox One at all. Honestly, for the first time ever, I felt betrayed. Nintendo used to be the company that would lead the charge with bold risk and new ideas. Now it felt like they were scrambling to barely keep up, and doing so without listening to the consumers one bit. They were leaning on nostalgia without delivering the same kind of quality. They marked the Wii U as a toy, not a console for seasoned gamers who have been with them since the beginning. They sold a confusing console around a half-baked gimmick without any games and expected fans just to go along with it. Why? Because we owe you one? Well, even features like the Miiverse, which kind of had potential, felt like just distractions from what was a soulless console. A system that didn't know what it wanted to be. Backward compatibility with old Wii titles just felt like an excuse for them to not give us anything new. And the internal storage was a complete joke. Out of the box, they were already asking you to buy external hard drives. And these external hard drives were just to make it really usable. Yeah, some good games eventually arrived, like Super Smash Bros., Mario Kart, and Super Mario 3D. But by that time, the damage was done. Gamers had moved on. And the worst part, developers were moving on too. Only 13.5 million units sold. That was the lowest selling console Nintendo ever had. It wasn't just a failure, it was a wake-up call for developers, for gamers, for the gaming industry worldwide. What hurt most was that it was a follow-up from the Wii, a console that brought people together. It introduced motion controls and DS connectivity. Like, the Wii U would have been great if it was just an accessory, but they gave us this accessory and they tried to pawn it off like a brand new console. Nintendo had always been a company that inspired wonder. They made us feel like gaming was magical, but many of us were asking, is Nintendo still Nintendo? After the confusion and disappointment of the Wii U, the Switch felt like a return to form. It was clean, simple, clear. It was a hybrid console you could play on your TV, or you could take it with you on the go. No second screen gimmicks, no clunky add-ons, just games the way you wanted to play them. And the excitement was real. I mean, the trailer for Breath of the Wild, that thing is unforgettable. Mario in a sandbox style city, the click of the Joy-Con snapping in, it hit. Nintendo finally seemed like they got it again. And when the system came out in 2017, they came out swinging with Breath of the Wild. I mean, the game was a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece. Super Mario Odyssey was amazing, giving us the same feeling and discovery of imagination that we got in Super Mario 64. But this time, the graphics were cleaner. Then you got Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with this huge cast of fighters. And again, I was still playing as Ness. I still am playing with Ness. So on the surface, it felt like with the Switch, Nintendo was back. But once that launch window passed, the honeymoon was over. The hardware, while really clever, it felt kind of cheap in your hands. Joy-Con drift became a global issue, a design flaw that Nintendo knew about and still put on the shelves. And they would do this again and again and again. Even with lawsuits and widespread complaints, Nintendo was sluggish to respond. For a company that had rock solid quality, it felt careless. It felt disrespectful. What sucks about this is, yeah, you got some of these good games, but I can't even play them because all my controllers are breaking. And what made it worse is that the Switch came in a Switch Lite. Now, the Switch Lite you couldn't put on a dock. It was just meant for straight taking on the go. But I wouldn't want to get this system because if drift is such a problem, what happens when the sticks on my Switch Lite break? Do I have to get a brand new system? The eShop became a mess, cluttered with shovelware and bloated with copy-paste games. The thing was barely curated. Online play required a paid subscription but delivered next to nothing in return. Still no voice chat, still no proper friend system, no achievements, no folders, basic features that were on the Xbox and the PlayStation it didn't even have. And again, the Switch was great, but if we're comparing graphics to graphics, the PlayStation and the Xbox are still winning at this time. And while the games kept coming, a lot of them felt like safe repackaged content from the Wii. You had Mario Kart, you had Donkey Kong, you had Pikmin. Sure, these were great games, but they had already been released on the Wii U. Nintendo seemed to be selling us our childhood again, but at full price this time. Sure, the Nintendo Switch has what they call emulators, which you can play their old classics on. You can play like the Nintendo 64, all the consoles I basically just mentioned, almost all of them anyway. But the thing is, they don't really release too many titles, and the titles they do release are basically drip fed to you. You have to wait months before they even release something, and sometimes games just go missing off of there out of nowhere. The worst part about this is you can't really find these titles anywhere. Good luck trying to find yourself an old Nintendo or Super Nintendo that someone's not charging an arm and a leg for. And then even if you do get it, who's to say it works or not? And then if anybody tries to make emulators so you can play these old Nintendo games, Nintendo will automatically try to shut that down with lawsuits. And my thing is that some of these games are such great games. They're such games that I would love to play again. I would love to relive that nostalgia. And honestly, you could probably tax me a lot of money and I would still pay for that. And I think a lot of gamers would. Maybe we wouldn't be too happy about it, but it'd be nice to just try them out once in a while. But we can't even get that. We can't even get that from Nintendo, and we can't even get that from an outside source. So we wait and we wait for Nintendo to give us one tiny curated drip of our past. And for those of us who've been fans for the beginning, it doesn't feel like preservation. It feels like control. Like they're holding our nostalgia hostage and selling it to us little by little. Yes, the Switch gave us some incredible games and it sold incredible numbers. It brought Nintendo back to the mainstream in a major way. But for longtime fans, for those of us who remember warp zones, blowing on cartridges, tagging in our parents to beat Bowser, it's hard not to feel like it's missing something. The innovation, the care, the soul. That's the part we're still waiting to see. That's the part we're still waiting to see return. And now, here we are, standing at the edge of a new era again. The Nintendo Switch 2 is looming, a follow-up to a console that both reignited our love for Nintendo and quietly reminded us just how much they've stopped trying. What do we know so far? Leaks, demos, dev kits. Sure, it's coming. One of the biggest reveals, Breath of the Wild running at 60 frames per second on the new hardware. Wait, now it's running at 60 FPS? Why didn't it run in 60 FPS in 2017? That game chugged along with frame drops, pop-in, and slowdowns when too much happened on screen. We accepted it at the time because it was new, because we believe in the magic. But now we're supposed to applaud Nintendo for finally giving us the same game 7 years later with the same performance it should have launched with? That's not progress, that's maintenance. What about the sequel, Tears of the Kingdom? Let's talk about it. Sure, it's had its moments, flying through the skies, building contraptions, solving puzzles. But at its core, it's the same map, the same world, the same shrines dressed in new clothes. It's like Nintendo took the homework from Breath of the Wild, scribbled some new features in the margins, and turned it in again. Weapon durability, still terrible. Story, thin and forgettable. Ganondorf, great voice, wasted potential. Dungeons, calling them dungeons is an insult to Ocarina of Time. And the building mechanics, cool in theory, but by hour 40 it feels more like you're applying for a job at a medieval Home Depot than saving Hyrule. And let's not forget Nintendo's new GameCube emulator, which, just like its predecessors, promises access to your favorite classics, but only if you're willing to wait for them one at a time. Remember when you could download whatever you wanted from the virtual console on Wii? God. Now it's back to begging for Paper Mario, Thousand Year Door, while Nintendo pretends it's doing us a favor by drip feeding a game we beat 15 years ago. All while aggressively banning the same kind of emulators them themselves are now repackaging. If a fan builds an emulator for preservation or access, shut down, legal threats, takedowns. But when Nintendo does it, $50 a year, please. And don't forget to say thank you. Even when third-party games finally crawl over to the system, it's late to the party. Cyberpunk 2077, one of the most anticipated, overhyped, and hilariously buggy games of all time, finally gets a mention for the Switch 2. But why? At this point, even the bugs are nostalgic. The game is nearly 4 years old. By the time it launches on Switch 2, we'll already be playing its sequel on other platforms. Nintendo's always behind the curve, but now it feels like they're not even trying to catch up. They're just slapping stickers on an old machine and calling it new. Nintendo used to lead, it used to pioneer. It built genres, entire childhoods off of imagination. From blowing in the cartridges and finding Yoshi on the roof, from couch co-op with your mom, from all-night sleepovers playing Smash Brothers and GoldenEye. Nintendo was the magic. But somewhere along the line, that spark dimmed. The Switch 2 doesn't feel like a revolution. It feels like a patch, like an update. It feels like the same situation with the Wii and the Wii U. It's a performance update. A quiet admission that they never gave us the full experience the first time around. And for longtime fans, for players who've been here since World 1, it's hard not to feel that the magic is being sold back to us, piece by piece, with the screen smudged by greed. We don't need more ports. We don't need more deluxe editions. We don't need recycled ideas wrapped up in nostalgic packaging. We need Nintendo to create again, to dream again, to remember the players that were there since day one, and who are all still here, waiting for the next great memory. Until then, we're just stuck in a loading screen. You know, for all the criticism, for all the frustration, for all the disappointment and missed opportunities, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this if I didn't care, if we as gamers didn't care. Because this video right here isn't about launch lineups or new consoles or frame rates. It's about memories. It's about childhood. It's about the first time you heard the Mario coin and it clicked inside your soul. It's about tag teaming levels with your mom, passing the controller during boss fights, or staying up till 3 a.m. to beat one more stage. It's about blowing in cartridges and think you had actually fixed something, and guess what? It did. It's about believing in magic because Nintendo once gave us a reason to. We grew up with these games. We grew up because of these games. They taught us patience, creativity, teamwork. They taught us how to fail and get back up again. How many times have you died in a game at a level and you got right back at it? So when the company behind all of that starts phoning it in, when innovation turns to repetition, it doesn't just sting. It honestly breaks your heart because we remember who they used to be. The pioneers, the risk takers, the storytellers, the weird, wild, wonderful rebels, a Japanese game company who put an Italian plumber in a world full of dinosaurs and mushrooms and Goombas and made it something magical. So no, I mean, I know I'm coming off like this, but it's not just a hate piece. Matter of fact, it's not a hate piece at all. This is a plea from someone who knows Nintendo could do better, that they should do better, because when they try, when they care, there is no one else out there like them. Nobody. We just want that version of Nintendo back, not for the sake of nostalgia, not to live in the past, but to see what kind of future they could build. If they remember why we all picked up a controller in the first place. All right, thank you so much for listening to me talk about video games for X amount of time. I know you could have been anywhere doing anything, but really quick, video games really did mean a lot to me growing up. Things weren't always great in my house when I was a child. And I'm not going to get into that. We all had problems growing up. We all got problems. But for me, video games were an escape. I got to go to these different worlds and be these different people. I could be not just an Italian plumber jumping on turtles. I could be the blue bomber fighting Dr. Wily. I can have all the bragging rights in the world as Ness. A place where my problems were no longer existent for that hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or for however long I played. I didn't have those problems anymore. My problems were saving the day, rescuing the princess, fighting Ganondorf, or making memories with my family and friends. Video games meant more to me than just video games. Anyway, thank you again for stopping by, and hopefully I get to see you again in the next one.